Good evening. I'm Humayon with Global Update News. Tensions in the Middle East have reached a boiling point. Tonight, we bring you a comprehensive report on the escalating conflict between Iran and Israel. What started as a covert shadow war has now turned into open conflict. Let's begin with how it unfolded. On June 13th, Israeli airstrikes targeted several critical sites deep inside Iranian territory, including missile development facilities and nuclear research centers near Tehran, Isfahan, and Natanz. Israel claimed the attacks were in response to an attempted drone incursion earlier that week, allegedly orchestrated by Iran. These strikes resulted in dozens of casualties and widespread infrastructure damage. The message was clear: Israel was no longer willing to tolerate what it called increasing provocations. Within 72 hours, Iran retaliated. Over 200 drones, 150 cruise missiles, and several hypersonic projectiles were launched toward Israel. This marked the largest direct military exchange between the two countries in modern history.
The Iranian missile barrage triggered air raid sirens across Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem. Israel's advanced missile defense systems, including the Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow 3, were activated at full capacity. While most threats were intercepted, several projectiles did breach Israeli airspace. A military logistics center in southern Israel sustained heavy damage, and civilian buildings in Kiryat Gat and Ashkelon were also hit. Israeli emergency services reported at least 27 deaths and over 100 injuries. Prime Minister Netanyahu declared a state of national emergency, calling the attack an act of war. In Iran, officials claimed their response was measured and targeted military infrastructure only. However, satellite imagery shows that both civilian and strategic facilities in Israel were affected. At the same time, pro-Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria began launching smaller-scale rocket attacks on U.S. and Israeli outposts.
The reaction from the international community has been swift. The United States has placed its forces in the region on high alert. 2 aircraft carrier strike groups have been repositioned to the eastern Mediterranean. President Biden called for calm, but reaffirmed America's commitment to defending Israel. In his words, "This is a volatile moment and restraint is essential." The European Union has called for an immediate ceasefire. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session but failed to pass a resolution after vetoes from multiple sides. Meanwhile, global oil prices have surged by nearly 12% as traders feared disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly 20% of the world's oil supply flows.
Inside Iran, the government has declared national mourning. Iranian state media reports over 250 deaths since the conflict escalated, including senior military officers, scientists, and civilians caught in the crossfire. Anti-air systems in cities like Qom, Mashhad, and Bandar Abbas are now on full alert. Long-range missile units have been repositioned near the western border, close to Iraq. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei vowed that any future aggression would be met with double the response. Meanwhile, pro-peace activists in Tehran have begun circulating open letters urging de-escalation. In Israel, some members of the Knesset have called for a diplomatic off-ramp to avoid a broader war.
As of this hour, airspace across much of the region remains restricted. Civilian flights have been rerouted and major airlines are canceling routes through the Gulf region. Schools across Israel remain closed. In Iran, hospitals are overwhelmed and basic supplies are being rationed in several provinces. Military analysts warn that any further miscalculation, whether intentional or accidental, could draw in more players. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and even regional powers like Turkey and Saudi Arabia are now watching the situation closely. One U.S. intelligence official told us off-record, quote, "The region hasn't been this close to full-scale war in over 2 decades."
And yet, in the midst of it all, ordinary people on both sides are calling for peace. Social media is filled with videos of Iranian and Israeli citizens sharing messages of hope, solidarity, and humanity. Hashtags like No More War and Voices for Peace are now trending worldwide. In times of darkness, these glimmers of light remind us of what's truly at stake.
For now, the world waits. We will continue to follow this story and bring you verified, up-to-date information. From Global Update News, I'm Humayon.
And I'm Farhanaz. Thank you for listening, and may peace prevail.